have really the opportunity to ask questions today. So I do want to encourage you, but basically we're going to continue with general algebra today. And so generally, general algebra is question 1 and question 2 in paper 1's exam. And in the last lesson, we were talking about things like equations, inequalities, these types of things. We will also today start to talk a little bit more about exponents and surds, if there are time, or if there is time, because that also falls into the general algebra types of questions. Before we start with the old exam questions, are there any things that you would like to clarify or any particular topics you want to make me aware of that you need help with? I just want to give you a moment to either come online and make a comment or just put something in the chat so I'm aware of what it is that you would like me to. I have a plan, but I can always adapt the way my plan goes for the day. And so I'd like to be aware of kind of just if there's any particular section you're like, oh, I really like to fill some holes in that section. Okay. Cool. Well, then let's get rolling. So if we look at, this is another question 1 from a previous exam, and I want to start just like the last one. I want to start by us doing these first 2 questions. And these are what I would call, routine knowledge questions and simple procedure questions. They're the marks that we want to make sure we put in the bag every exam that we write. So over to you guys. Let's try and do those first 2. And then we will move on after our little warm up on these 2 questions. Okay, so Awami's asked about functions. So Awami, we'll definitely try and, maybe I should try and do functions next week. For today, we're going to stay in the world of general algebra, but I hear you about functions is definitely a topic that students do need lots of practice on. So maybe next week, I'll think about changing next week's program to functions instead of paper 2. Maybe not a bad idea, because I agree, functions need lots of TLC. When you have got your answers, you can put them in the chat, or you can give a tip. In the first question, the one thing that I do notice is it's only worth 2 marks, which probably means that might be sending you a bit of a signal. The fact that there's only worth 2 marks. Who's got the answer for question 1.1.1? So I'd love someone to raise their hand to tell me how they would do 1.1.1, or if you would like me to give some explanation for 1.1.1, just let me know. I'm going to give you a little bit more time because I think a lot of people are on 1.1.2. So I'll give you another minute or so just to have a proper crack at the question. So those of you who are done with 1.1.1, I want you to put the key step that you've recognized that made your life easier? There's something you have to notice about 1.1.1 in order to solve it easily. Then it's quick. I'd love for you guys to put it in the chat what it is that you noticed, or if you just raise your hand, you can tell me, because not everyone will notice that. I think a lot of students will multiply this out and then probably go off on a quite a long journey. If my experience from the classroom is anything to remember. Oh, I see Mbuso has put an answer in there, and Mbuso, I think I agree with you. Would you like to tell us how you did that, Mbuso? What was the key step? So for me, the key step is realizing that this is already factorized. And so when you realize it's already factorized, all you need to do to get the answer is to say that either 2x minus 3 is naught or x plus 7 is naught. If either of these two brackets are 0, it will make the whole thing 0 and then give me a solution. And so therefore, my answer is going to be x. I move the 3 across. So I get 2x equals 3. And on this side, and if I divide both sides by 2, I get x is 3 over 2. So that is the answer for the first one. Give me a thumbs up if you understood my logic. Just want to get a sense from the class if they're with me, or if you guys are whereabouts you are. Thumbs up if you understood that explanation. Thumbs down if you, okay. Awesome. Now, the second question, there's a code, there's a bit of information. Leave your answer correct 2 decimal places. What is that secretly telling you? I want to know in the chat or anywhere, what is that secretly telling you? And then once you know what it's telling you, then I want to see some answers coming through in the chat. You guys have got it. It's the quadratic formula. Yes. It means you have to use, this is a quadratic equation, and you need to use this formula. And so really, that means knowing what A is, what B is, and what C is. So 7, 3, minus 2. Now I want some answers, but I'm going to give you some more time for that. You can do it. You can do it. So that's what I call the substitution step. And then we still need to get our answers. Pop them in the chat. I'm still on my journey here. Oh, Tando Weto has put answers down. Let's see if you agree. So I seem to be getting a delta value of 65. Now, delta is the value of the thing inside the triangle. And the way that we get our answers is basically you have to go minus 3 plus the square root of 65 divided by 14. And then the other root is going to come from going minus 3 minus the square root of 65 over 14. I want to see if Watobe is the only person who's getting, what's going on there. If you confirm or deny what is being said. I don't think I've made any silly mistakes here. -4 times A times C. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Let's have a look. 7 times 2, 56 plus the 9. Yeah. -3 plus 65. I get X is 0.36 on this side. Oh, another Tando. Let's see what you get. And then on the other side, I get -3 minus the square root of 65 divided by 14. And I get minus 0.79. So the one that is a little bit more tricky seems to be this side. No, Thunderweightle, that's exactly why you're here, because you're going to get that feedback and then you'll trace where you went wrong. And I think you're not the only one. There's definitely funky stuff can happen inside of Delta. And so you always have to be a bit careful when you sub in. Sometimes I even work out Delta separately before I even do the question. So sometimes I will go B squared minus 4AC. I get my Delta value, whatever it is, like in this case, say 65. And then once I've done that part, I just pop that into my quadratic formula. Sometimes that makes it a bit simpler. And then I just think, oh, it's -3 plus the square root of Delta, and then like that. Okay, are there any questions before I move on? There is going to be 2 questions like this in every paper 1 until the end of matric. And so it's important that we bank these marks. Otherwise, just give me a thumbs up in the chat if you're happy for me to continue. Pleasure, Thunderweightle. Give us a thumbs up if you're like, bring it on, time for the next one. Okay. So the next question, I'm going to leave out 1.1.3. I will come back to it, but I want us to do 1.1.4, which it's an inequality question. And we did a little bit of this in the last lesson, but I think we need a bit more practice. And so I want you to try and solve 1.1.4. But before we go and solve it, I need some tips from the class. So I'd love someone to come online and just give me a little tip to think about, like, what would be a good first step? Pretend I have spontaneous amnesia and suddenly I'm no longer a math teacher. But if you just give me one tip, then I'll remember all my skills. So what would that one tip be for me to get my brain back in gear? I know somebody wants to help me. What would your first step be? What would your strategy? I heard someone there, but I couldn't quite hear that. Get rid of the brackets. Owami, I think that is a fantastic solution. So Owami's tip is to get rid of this bracket first. Okay, that is a great first tip, Owami. I'll let you guys get going as to what the second step would be after that. And then if there are questions or comments, you can raise your hand, but I'm going to give you some time to do that. So Wami was saying I should multiply out, which gives me that. But now I need some help. That was step 1. what is step 2 going to be? Let's make our thinking explicit. Like what, if we think about inequalities from the last lesson, I said we treat them a lot like equations. There's just one little thing that's different, or one or two little things that are different. If I was solving an equation exactly the same, I transpose, or another way of saying it is I move them all to one side to get them into standard form. And so I would get that as my step 2. So we say step 1, step 2. Okay. What is step 3 going to be? Okay, be careful here, Watobe. If you multiply or divide by a negative, the signs will change. But when you transpose, or basically take away 3x from both sides and take away 18 from both sides, this inequality is going to stay exactly the way it is. It's still facing the same way. The only time that inequalities will switch the direction, so the only time the crocodile mouth changes direction, is if you divide by a negative or if you times by a negative. And so in this case, because you're not doing either of those things, the crocodile mouth faces the same way. Now, the thing that we're looking for is to factorize this. Now, what technique are we going to use to factorize this thing? See clear? I don't think it's a difference of 2 squares, but you're on the right thing. I don't think it's a common factor either. What other technique do you think we could use that's available to us? Who else? Who wants to phone a friend or give us a little hint? So I think the formula, yes, exactly. So we can either factorize this, so using the trinomial factorization, or we can use the formula. And what we're looking for is we're looking for what's called the critical values, or the zero values of this expression. So, and before we do that, let me even point something out. This thing over here is a parabola. If you wanted to understand what this thing looks like as a graph, it's a happy parabola. And the reason I know it's a parabola is because of the 2 and because the number in front is a positive 1. And so when I think of solving this inequality, I think of a parabola that looks like this. So smiling at me. Now, I want to know where this parabola is greater than 0. And it's greater than 0 when the graph is above the x-axis. So it's really these 2 parts that I'm looking for, but I don't know what these 2 values are, what we call the critical values, or the 0 values of the parabola. And so that's what we're going to use the formula to find out, or the trinomial factorization. So I want someone to work out the answers to that. And while you're working, I'm going to work out ones too. At least I'm going to try. I'll show you both methods if there's time. Oh wait, that's going to be. Okay, Awami's put an answer in. Who else? Does anybody agree with Awami? Mikhail agrees. Yep. So all I've done here is I factorized this trinomial above into its factorized form. And what we can see is if we look at this bit that I've highlighted in yellow, the 0 values are going to be x is 6. So if there was a 6 where the x is now, and the other 0 value is going to be -3. So it's basically like whatever makes these things equal to 0. So x minus 6 must equal 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. So x is 6, x is -3. If you think of this parabola, the values are going to be basically there. Now, here is the final step. When we talk about an inequality, we're looking for all the values that make the statement true. So we're asking, when is x squared minus 3x minus 18 greater than 0? It's greater than 0 when it's above the line. It's basically the yellow bits. And so my final answer is going to be x is less than minus 3, which is this bit over here, or x is greater than 6. And so that is going to be my final answer for that inequality. If you had, I'm not going to do the sign table right now because I think this is probably simpler. Give me a thumbs up if you feel like you followed that. Or if you have any questions, you can put your hand up now. So if we go back to the very beginning, step 1 was multiplying out. So that was 1 mark. Step 2 was this. Step 3 was the factorizing. And then 4 is just going to be getting to the answer. Okay, and we'll just keep practicing that. All right, then before we go to the break, every exam paper until the end of matric is going to have a simultaneous equation. I want you to solve for x and y for this simultaneous equation that I'm putting in green, that I'm highlighting. And you can start that now. And then I will give you some time. And yeah, let's get going. Because I want to make sure you've got the solid foundation where you know how to do these types of questions. And if you need to, take a screenshot now of the work on the board, because I am going to erase it not too long from now. I do love to hear about your thinking. So if you have a top tip, in the last lesson, I gave you some like thinking skills or some strategies you could use. I'd love to hear your strategies. What do you think is the step 1? Because often in maths, if you make the first step well, it makes the rest of the journey a lot easier. So can somebody in the class give me some hints about the way they would approach 1.2, either audio or in the chat? What is the key first step? In this case, it's pretty important. So in the last lesson, what I said there's almost always an easier and a harder equation. And I would substitute the easier equation, which for me would be this one, into the harder one over here. And when I look at the easy one, I would choose the easier variable to make the subject of the formula. So when I looked at the easy equation, I would make the x the subject of the formula because it looks the easiest to me. And so the very important first step is to say, I mean, it's not wrong to do it with y. You could do it with y. But why involve the 2 when your life can be so much simpler by just dealing with a simple x, which is already there? And so then to get you going, what you need to do is wherever there's an x, you're going to make a substitution. So I'm actually going to leave that space. It's almost like there's a blank there, plus y. And the subbing in step is 1 minus 2y, 1 minus 2y. Once you've done that, your chances of succeeding are much higher. So just give me a thumbs up if you followed my step 1 and step 2 there. Because if you get the logic of that, sure, you can make an error on the expanding, but that first step is really important. Okay. Awesome. So I'm building your thinking skills here. Now let's see if you can get to the back of this. I've left out my 0 here. Oh, this is not a bit easier than I thought, actually, because this is going to be 0. Well, it's going to cancel out, or whatever we got left, we got the 1. Oh, no, wait, hold on. Have I made a mistake here? Let's have a quick look. Positive 1. 1 minus 2y, that's fine. Oh, there's my mistake. Look how easy it is to make a silly mistake. So this should be plus 3y, and this should be minus 6y squared. Plus y equals 0. See, even for me, like you can see how you have to be methodical about the way you multiply out these terms. And so then I'm going to collect them again. And what I like to do is I like to almost group them. I look for all the squared. So here's 4y squared. That's 1y squared. Here's minus 6y squared. Those are all the squared terms that I can see. And so I get 5y squared minus 6y squared, which gives me minus y squared. It's almost like that's the sum of all those terms together. Now I'm going to look for the lonely y's, and minus 2y minus, so it's minus 4y plus 3y plus y. Those are actually going to cancel each other out. And so, I mean, I don't have to write plus 0, but essentially that's what I get. And then what is left is just that 1. So I get plus 1 equals 0. And then what happens is if I move the y squared to the other side, I get 1 equals y squared. And so then if I square root, basically if 1 equals y squared, if I square root both sides, y is going to be plus or minus 1. Now, I'm not finished, but I am aware that that was quite a sneaky one. And so what I'd like is, I would like thumbs up if you followed my working, thumbs down if you feel a bit confused and want to ask a question. And then we can talk about how do we find the last 2 bits. Okay, so again, don't be afraid to vote. Thumbs up if you followed my thinking, thumbs down if you didn't. Just to outline the steps that I went through, the important step was to choose the easier equation, put it into the hard one, and then, there was some serious maths action going on around here. And even for Mr. Maths teacher here, I had to be, calm and focused the way I went through, and the coloring in definitely helped me. And so then, I work through it and I get to here. Now there's one final step, and the final step is to find x. And the way I find x is I use the original equation, which is 1 minus 2y. And when x is 1, so when x is 1, I'm going to get 1 minus 2 times 1. So let's see if I can put this in. So when x is 1, then this is going to be 1 minus 2 times 1, which is minus 1. And when x is minus 1, let's get rid of this bit here. Basically, when x is minus 1, we're going to get 1 minus 2 times 1 minus 2 times minus 1, which is going to give us 3, because minus 2 times minus 1 is plus 2, so it's 3. So then my final answer is basically when x is 1, then y, so easy to get in a bit of muddle here. We were solving for x now, so we will go, well, actually, let me just highlight this. The reason I'm confusing myself is I'm saying this is y. So in summing up, y was plus or minus 1 from the general thing. And then we took the formula, x is 1 minus 2y, and these values over here are my x values. And that's how we get the simultaneous equation. So answers. Okay. Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been going hard at it for a while now. And so what I want to do is I want you to stand up on your feet. I want you to turn your cameras on, and I want you to join me in a luxurious stretch where you indulge yourself so that your body can recover a little bit. So, Lebo, if you could help me by encouraging our students, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we take care of our bodies after a rather demanding simultaneous equation.
Please join us in the stretch, guys. This question was quite a handful and you deserve a break.
Come on, I want to
put on
see
your cameras. Let's see your lovely faces.
Where are the people who are on the journey with me? Come on, guys. I want to feel some team spirit here.
Shout out to Rosaria. Shout out to Nolitando.
Here we go.
Yes, guys, your body will thank you.
There's the team. Come on, guys. Rosaria,
we're all in this together.
Your body wants some love. Just stand up, stretch it out. Oh, there we go. Feel the oxygen coming back into your brain. Trust me, it can reset. Yes, Lesego, stretch that neck out.
Shout out to Lesego.
Oh, I can feel the joy coming back into my shoulders. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, I'm telling you, we weren't made to sit still all the time.
Yes, okay. Ready for the second half.
Yes. Okay, so let's just do a quick little brain break. So I want to know, what is the answer for this one over here? Let's start with that, and I'll decide if there's time for a second one. So what is the answer to the blue question? Yes, Thunderwetu, I do. I feel young again. The power of the stretch. What do we think the final answer is going to be? Zanele is locked in an answer. All will be revealed in good time. Oh, lots of people are. Remember, no calculators here. Hey? This is all in the brain. I suppose I should have said that. But BODMAS says the division gets done first. So that part and that part need to get done first. And so that's why we get 7 minus 1 plus 49 minus 7, which should give us 6 plus 42, which is, final answer is 48. So that was just a test to see if you knew your BODMAS. And yeah, well done to Zanele, Owami, Thunderwetu, Mikhail. It seems as if we have, yeah, those 7s do not intimidate us whatsoever.
Well done, guys.
It's funny when you just see
Rosario
like that.
thought it was a trick question. I thought it's all those riddles.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing. You never quite know when it's a riddle or when it's being serious. And then, that kind of makes your brain go a bit, huh?
Trust issues.
I know. I've given some quite nasty ones in the past, so I understand. Okay, let us have a look at. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at what's called a surd equation. So let me get rid of the working out that I've done over here. Or actually, no. Yeah, let's do a surd equation. So let's get rid of all this working out quickly, and we'll go to that. But let me make this a bit bigger. Rid of this. Maybe I can just move it down. Nope. All right. So what I want to focus on in the next part of this lesson is a surd equation, and then maybe some basic exponents if there is time. Now, question that is a surd equation in this scenario is question 1.1.3. And it's called a surd equation because there's the square root above the x, or x minus 1. I want to ask the class, does anybody know what their first step would be in solving the surd equation? What can you remember from class? Because there's a very distinctive set of steps you have to follow. And I'm just wondering if any of you remember those steps. Step 1 is to isolate the surd. So if I look at 1.1.3, if I'm going to isolate the surd, I need to get it by itself. And so that means I am going to take the 3 to the other side, and I get x minus 3. So that is step 1 in a surd equation. Always isolate the surd, get the surd by itself. Who knows what the second step is? Or what do you think? I think all of you can see the square root is a problem. What can we do to get, oh, Mboso, you're absolutely correct. You take the 3 to the other side. I want to know, how do I deal with a problem like a square root? It's the second step in solving surd equations. Owami, yes, you square both sides. And why do we square both sides? Well, if we square both sides, what that's going to do is it's going to get rid of the square root, which is causing us all this trouble. Okay, so that is why we square both sides. So if we square both sides, it kind of looks like that. But what that means is the next line, we get that. And so now this is our surd equation. So now what's going to happen is you are going to have to expand this x minus 3, which is called a binomial squared. And there are some shortcuts for this. But I want to give everybody a chance now to try and find me the values of x that would solve the surd equation. So off we go. We basically just have to do some cleaning up, some multiplying out and collecting. And I want to give you 2 minutes to solve this equation. See what you can do. Yes, not a ton. I see your comment there. You're absolutely correct. Okay, so Zanele, I absolutely can. What part of it would you like me to focus on? So probably the most tricky bit is this expanding of the binomial. There is a shortcut to doing this. So I'm doing it the long way, but I wasn't quite sure which way you prefer. But you should be getting down to this trinomial, but now you still need to solve it. And so this is where you can either use the formula if you would like, or if it can be factorized, you can just use factorization techniques. So Zanele, if you want, you can just put your hand up and then we can just take your question audibly if that would be helpful.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Zanele.
Okay, sir. No,
Yeah.
It was for another question. I wanted you to finish with this one, but then I pressed send by mistake. So you can finish, we can finish off this one and then I'll ask after this one.
Okay, cool. All good. So what I'm getting is I'm getting x is 5 or x is 2. But in a surd equation, there's one more final step that I need to do. What is the final step in a surd equation? If you look at what I've done isolate the surd, square both sides, but there's one more final step I need to do. And these were my answers. What is that step I need to do?
Any tips, guys?
Okay, so you need to check. You need to check both your answers. Lesego, absolutely, absolutely. So we check x is 5. So we take 5 and we put it into the original equation. And the original equation, we say it was x minus 1 square rooted. So the left-hand side in the original equation would have been 5 minus 1, which is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. And then on the right-hand side, x is 5. So this answer is checked. That's good. X is 2. If I sub it into the original, 2 minus 1 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. Does 4 equal 2? No. So the left-hand side does not equal the right-hand side. And so we reject that. And the answer is just going to be x is 5. So what I did was when I put the numbers back into the original equation, you can see that the x is 2 doesn't, the left-hand side doesn't equal the right-hand side when I sub back into the original. And that's why we reject it. All right. So that is where we're going to leave it for today. In the quiz this week, there are some exponent questions that you guys can just have a go at, see if you can do them. We haven't had a chance to get to them in class this week, but just do your best. Okay. And then, Lebo, if you could put the link to the...
Sorry, Mr. Yes, bye.
Cool. Okay. And then are there...
Yes, I accidentally said it before you said. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. Doesn't matter. It's fine. So there it is over there. Okay, cool. Then, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to go off and go and do that quiz. And then, yeah, it was fantastic being with you today. I hope that you have a good quiz experience.